Get a 5-minute business book review, pivotal moments with failed businesses, and hear an interview with a business disruptor who will share their $10,000 mistake. This is the Forward Motion Business Show with Professor Ken and Professor Paul A Marino. Hit new heights. Start with Forward Motion.
Okay, so we're live. This is the Forward Motion Business Show. I'm Professor Ken.
And I'm Professor Paul A Marino.
And we're in the studio here at United International College. It's been some time. We started our show here a little bit ago before the pandemic, of course, and here we are back. So I'm excited to be back.
It's good to be back.
Exactly, right? So thanks for listening. Today, we're actually going to cover a couple of great things. We're going to focus a little bit on how we can be more kind to our community. We're also going to talk about a business case, Quibi, which is an incredible failure, a $1.7 billion failure that happened during the pandemic. So we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about a business book, The Power of Positive Thinking, which I think can help us all today, right? So Paul, why don't you introduce our guests and give us an intro there, and let's get the conversation started.
Well, I want to introduce Kadie Black. I've known Kadie for many, many years, and I've always been very impressed about her dedication to philanthropy and her dedication to helping people. So she has a pretty large background in that area. She's doing some very exciting stuff currently. So without any further ado, Kadie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So born and raised here in Miami. I lived in New York for a little while, but before that, I was really working in child welfare. So worked in child welfare probably for the first part of my career and really felt kind of in love with the idea of helping others and being able to kind of give. And we know giving is the same as receiving. And so I've worked in my career and really been able to dedicate my life to cycle breaking. So that's what I say. I say I'm a cycle breaker, and I like taking on lots of work that helps to break cycles, including what I'm doing now, which is working at Kristi House. I'm their development director.
Kristi House is a very interesting organization. I've had the pleasure of visiting them. I've had the pleasure of doing some work with them.
Right.
They're dedicated, correct me if I'm wrong, Kadie, they're dedicated to helping women, young women who have been trafficked, correct?
So yeah, we have many things that Kristi House does, but so mainly we serve about 2,000 kids a year who have been sexually abused, and we provide therapy for those children, as well as we have 2 drop-in centers called Project Gold, which is helping sex trafficked victims, so commercially sex trafficked victims, but with wraparound services, therapy, educational services, help with business and really to help wrap around service around these girls.
Well, I had the opportunity of visiting them in Project Gold and doing some work with them in Project Gold. And it's an amazing facility. It's a drop-in facility for women who have been trafficked or abused. And in that setting, it's a very safe setting. They can do many different functions, from doing their laundry to getting help with their homework, having a hot meal.
Yeah, it's specifically geared towards girls, unfortunately, from around 12 to 18. We also don't kick girls out, and so they become members for life, and so they can come back and get services and, like you said, do their laundry, have a shower. We have 4 hot meals a week to help them just feel like they have a home to go to.
Now, these young women, mostly because you dedicate yourself to young women, how do they find you? How do they know about Kristi House?
Yeah, so we take referrals from everywhere. So it can be school. I mean, some of the statistics say that 40% of all calls to the abuse hotline kind of stem from school, from teachers, or, somebody who's concerned about a child. We get referrals to the state attorney's office. So if a child is arrested, usually now is a law that they won't be charged as an adult for prostitution or charged for prostitution at all. Instead, they recognize that this is a victim. And so they really work to get services. So we get a lot of referrals through the police and the state attorney's office as well.
I heard about that law. It's kind of like a
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
So
Exactly.
the person cannot be held legally responsible because the law views them, correct me if I'm wrong, the law views them as a victim.
Yeah. So, because most of the for the girls that we deal with,
Mhm.
there is usually a pimp, or in most cases something called a Romeo pimp, where
Mhm.
they really kind of groom and work to gain a child's trust
Mhm.
and then exploit that vulnerability. And so many times girls don't even recognize that they're being trafficked.
I read an incredible book that was given to me on the subject. It's called Stolen. And it is an amazing book, and it's told through the perspective of someone who has been trafficked, a young woman who was trafficked, and how she was brought into this whole terrible lifestyle through no fault of her own.
Right. And I think that's the thing. It's like through no fault of their own. And that's the same thing with children who have been victim of sexual abuse, you know, and we know that 1 in 6 boys and 1 in 4 girls will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday. And so the work of Kristi House is really, really important in helping to heal that trauma so that kids can have hope and they can, you know that that's not, this tragedy does not have to define them.
Yeah, it's not your fault.
Exactly.
It's not your fault. You're the victim in this.
Yeah.
You're absolutely the victim.
And so that's, essentially it was very great. It was very good when that law was passed. And there were a lot of really passionate people who came together to work together, to collaborate on getting that law passed that treated kids as victims, because usually they're not doing it in their own volition, or most, of the time.
Now, someone listening to this, how do they reach out to you? Okay, I think maybe I could use their services. Either someone who has been trafficked, someone who has been abused, or even someone who may be a teacher who may think that someone in their class has an issue. How do they reach out to you? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so Kristi House, Kristi house.org is it has all of the information. It has the abuse hotline. But it's okay to tell. And usually we talk about making sure that there's an adult in a child's life that they know is their safe person and that they can go to. And so it really also, if somebody does need help, of course they can come to Kristi House and we will connect them. But it's in terms of long term, it's really important that everybody go to kristihouse.org, because there are so many resources that are there that can help in prevention. And so it's having those really, really early conversations. And so I want to encourage, and people who are seeking support and are, especially if they are finding themselves alienated and feeling like they are being commercially sex trafficked, then, we will definitely, we have a line, and I'll make sure that I'm going to look it up on my phone so that we can get it on here.
Yeah, we'll get it on. Definitely.
Yeah, because there's a specific number, but also I just, feel like it's really important to talk about the prevention pieces of how do we prevent.
Right. The earlier they reach out to you, the better. Now, you go to extraordinary lengths to protect these people, to protect their anonymity, to protect their identity, to keep them safe. I know you have safe houses that they can actually go to. And this is all free, correct, Kadie?
Yeah, so there are no charge for any of our services, inclusive of therapy for kids who have been sexually abused, or we also now do a lot of therapy just for trauma. So we're experts, right? We have received a lot of federal grants to train our therapists, and our therapists are incredible, right? They work with these families and these children. And that's what's so great about Kristi House is it is a place that they can come, kids can come, families can come, and we will wrap those services around them and make sure that they have what they need. I remember so I've been at Kristi House for a year, but I've always been a big supporter of Kristi House throughout my career, including when I was working in child welfare, because I think it's such an important part of our community. And so I feel really grateful that I get to work here. But it was like 2 or 3 weeks into working at Kristi House, we had a request for a bed. And I thought to myself, just the little thing, the bed, and so this family needed a bed. And so what did we do? We got to IKEA, I volunteered to take the bed down there. I built the bed, and it was so, I get so much joy from giving, so much joy from giving. So for me, those are the things that drive me. And when I saw first of all, where the family was living and that there was not a bed for the child, and just thinking like, this child will never be able to heal, or if they don't have those like Maslow hierarchy of needs met,
Right.
and so, and just the joy in these kids and being able to give.
We
And so
have
I
no
think it's
idea of what these people are going through.
right.
I mean, someone can tell you, you could read a book like Stolen and you say, oh my
Mhm.
God, look at what this young woman went through. But until you actually see it, you have no idea
Right.
what they're going through.
Yeah. And I think that, it is, it's important to have gratitude around the things that we do have, and
Right.
be able to give,
That's
and
important.
people can give in all different types of ways.
Yes.
Monetary is wonderful. It allows us to do our services, but we take canned goods, and we have a Halloween costume drive going on that just finished, where our kids could come and pick Halloween costumes. We have a Thanksgiving food drive. We have a Christmas food drive, because many times, like our girls who come to our drop-in centers, that's their only hot meal. We provide food to our families as well, because a child can't get therapy if they're not, if they have a hungry belly, right?
Well, when I went to the Safe House, I was so impressed. It's a beautiful home. It's set up in a family setting. I remember you had 2 chefs there.
Yeah,
And
that's all by design.
Yeah, right.
We want the girls to feel like this is their home. This is
Right.
where they can heal. This is where they are safe.
Right.
Everybody deserves to have a place where they can go to feel safe, right?
Right. And then I went to the quiet room in the back, where the mentors interact with the young ladies. I didn't sit in on the session. Obviously, that's private. But I was so impressed with the entire process. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to be affiliated with Kristi House. I think
Well,
it's a great
I'm so
organization.
grateful to be here. I know I've taken up all
No,
of your
this
time.
is what we're here for. In fact, I'm just wondering, as you're going through this whole process, there's so much more that we could all do as individuals, of course, and here in the South Florida business community, right? So, what is your direction? What is your your advice? If, let's say, I'm a small business, okay, I know we've gone through all this stuff, but I really believe it's part of us. We have to contribute. We have to help where we can, volunteer and help. And you said there's a lot of ways that we can get involved, not just monetarily, but other ways of stuff. And before we started, you mentioned that you have these drives and you collect all these different things. So how can, if I'm a local business, if I have a pizzeria here in South Florida and I want to contribute some way,
Yeah.
what can I do? What can we do there?
So absolutely. I think that there's always opportunity. So if you're a pizzeria and you want to send pizzas, to our Safe House to serve one night a week, or even one night a month,
That's a great
it
idea.
helps, right? And
That's a
so
great idea.
those are ways. We will send a box out. You can come, you can pick it up, or we'll bring it to you for school supplies, for food, for all of these things, because throughout the year, baby supplies, right, all of these things just help our families, and
Sure.
having them in one place. So I also want to mention, so Kristi House is co-located with the state attorney's office, and with the police department, and with the Guardian Ad Litem program, because it really is a place that the child is child-centered, care for that child holistically. So helping them if they have to go to court and all this, and all those stuff can be really scary. So we
Right.
have toys that, when they come, we, in arts and crafts, and people can volunteer. So we also
Right.
have a robust volunteer program. So, I hate to use this cliche, it takes a village, but it takes so many
Oh, absolutely.
people
Oh, yeah. The problem is too big. The problem
Right,
is too big
right.
for one entity.
Yeah.
Speaking of contributing and speaking of helping, I it's a little late in the game, but I know you have an event coming up, don't you?
We do. And if you're tuning in now, if you're seeing this live, it's not too late. So on Thursday, we actually have a panel that is an expert panel. So we have Kathy Fernandez Rendell, our state attorney. We have the superintendent Alberto Carvalho. We have an FBI agent. We have a parent expert. And we're talking about how to keep kids safe from predators. So 1 in 5 kids that log on to a device will be solicited for sex. I'm going to say that again. 1 in 5 kids that log on. So you think that your kid is safe in their room while
They're not.
No.
Yeah.
So we have this portal now to tricky people
Right.
who are pretending to be the 11-year-old girl.
Right.
And so we're seeing, of course, because of the pandemic, we're seeing an increase of the need for this awareness and education. So we have a panel as part of our luncheon. So it's
No, it's a
Thursday the
virtual-
28th.
it's a
It's
virtual.
virtual.
That's
So
great.
everybody can
So
go
we can
on.
post it out.
Right.
Okay, that'd
Yeah.
be good.
So everybody can tune in. And I think, again, we can't eradicate. So Kristi House's mission is to eradicate child sexual abuse and sex trafficking.
Right.
We can't do that unless we bring awareness and
Yes.
unless each of us starts to have those
Right.
conversations. And they're difficult conversations.
They are. And we, those of us that are parents, I mean, that's the type of conversation that's really hard to hear. And then when we come across the actual story or something, that's just horrible to read about or to see on
Yeah.
TV, it's just a heartbreaking
Right.
thing. I mean, there's current cases here that still, emotionally strike me because my daughters, I have 2 daughters, my son are that age. Now they're older now, but still there's no,
There's no limit.
there's no limit.
There's no
Right.
limit.
And I have to tell you, so for my MBA, which is almost 20 years ago, we did a.
You look really good for your age.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I don't know. It's the COVID. It's the COVID look. Yeah, I kept the beard. This is called the COVID beard, by the way. If you're wondering,
You shaved it in your picture.
I did.
Though,
You see that?
here.
That's pre-COVID. That's pre-COVID. This is post-COVID. So for my MBA, so we had this speaking class. We all were responsible for coming up with a 15-minute presentation, but something that meant something to us, right? We had to emotionally connect with. Now, this is 40 of us in the room. So I did some research and I did my presentation on predators. Okay. And I did, so this is a full research with statistics, stats, and all this stuff. And I can't cite the stats to you now, but they're just mind-boggling.
Oh, yeah.
The 1 in 5 and how most of the abductions happen from someone that knows the family.
90%
And
of the time,
and
it's
you look
somebody
at
who
these
knows
things,
the
and
family.
that 1 in 5, and just to visualize that. So there's 40 of us in the room, like there's 3 of us right now. We all have children, let's say, and between the 3 of us, we might have 6 children. That means one of them
Yes.
in this room, one of
Yes.
them would be
At least approach.
At
at
least
least
approach. So that's where you start to say, don't send those pictures, right? Like there is a data hygiene
Mhm.
that we need to start teaching really early.
Right.
I mean, I'm like grateful that Instagram was not around when I was a kid.
Yeah. Right.
But I think it's so easy to post in this, world that then and photos are out there, and once it's out there, it's
You
out there.
can't take
You
it back.
can't
And
take it
and
back.
so right now, talking about the business end of this, we have the big tech companies as we speak are in front of Congress explaining how they're protecting our children through these medium channels. Now, as a marketer, I've been dealing with child advertising all my professional life, and they were always child laws. Like I was with the toy company, launched some toy products. There are laws that you have to follow when you try to promote your products to children, but on the internet there's no such thing. And you see, you could tell if you're 15, you could tell if you're 45. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. And you have these people who have always been around, right? Since I think the beginning of time, if we could go back to the beginning of time, they've always been around, unfortunately. But now they have this channel to go ahead and just really exploit and take advantage
Yes.
of these kids.
Yeah.
So in that discussion I had, and this again 20 years ago, and it's still in the back of my mind, and I think one of these days I hope to get there. I concluded with a nonprofit initiative. Now my kids were toddlers back then, so I was really passionate. I'm still passionate about it now. I called it the DAP Patrol, DAP, and it was called the Dads Against Predators. And my idea was to replicate something. I grew up in New York in the 80s, and there was this thing called the Guardian, the Angels, right? Which is the Silway. He's actually running for mayor of New York right now. So I would take the subway. I would go to school on the subway. I took 2 trains and 2 buses, and you would see these angels with the red berets all over the place.
Interesting.
And they would protect whoever needed protected, right? They didn't carry arms. They would just be threatening and all that stuff. Some of them might have been interesting, but in any case, so my thought was, and the Dads Against Predators, the DAP Patrol, would be volunteered screen fathers that would be at bus stops, be somewhere where the kids would need to be, just as a a presence,
deterrent.
right? Deterrent there, because that probably would help. So that's always been in the back of my mind. 20 years later, now we're talking about it here, and I'm thinking, wow. And I envisioned like a little polo shirt with a little badge and a communication device and all kinds of stuff, a hotline to the local police department and stuff like that. But I do think, but the concept is, it takes a lot of people to protect our children.
It does.
And that's the concept, right?
Yeah. And I think we have to, I like this idea of dads, right? Because we have to be vulnerable, right? And we have to break the silence, because it doesn't just happen to women. And young girls, it happens to boys and
absolutely.
men. And, I think that there is a way that men can lead with vulnerability and lead with courage to say, like, it's okay to tell. It's not your fault. There's not a
Right,
stigma. And, you can seek help.
Yes.
I
Agreed.
think we all have to be cognizant of the signs,
Yes.
because it's happening right under our eyes.
Yeah, it happens right in front of you. And
Yeah,
you, and
behavior changes,
Yeah.
if they're withdrawn, emotional changes.
I tell you,
failure in school. is a
failure in
big
school.
one.
And I tell you, listen, I don't know what side of the fence you stand on. I was in my child's faces when it came to the internet. Now, I'm a little more internet savvy than most parents, let's say, right? But the computer for my oldest, the computer, now she's a millennial, so she was born in '90s. So back then, she was like 8 or 9 when computers started hitting home. But the computer sat in the middle of the room, not in her bedroom, where I can always see her on the computer.
Right.
My kids weren't allowed to have their laptops in their bedrooms and stuff. And I was always in their business, not too intrusive, but intrusive enough to stay in their business, to be protective.
Right.
Because they don't know, they don't see. Maybe I don't even know and I don't see. And you just put another veil of protection around them. And I think,
because it's also now in their hands everywhere.
Right.
So it's
They're on
the
the phone.
TikTok, and it's the, there's all different apps, and, most of the parents don't have Snapchat, but kids have Snapchat. So I
Right.
think that there's a important piece here about everybody educating themselves,
Yes.
right? And then parents being able to have those conversations.
And that's why this whole thing that's happening now, and I think Facebook, Snapchat or WhatsApp, and Twitter, not Twitter, but one of the other big techs are in front of Congress explaining how they're not damaging to our children, specifically teenage girls, right? I mean, when I grew up, it was all about the body image and things of that nature. You look at, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I see a lot of different feeds and stuff. You look at what's out there now, and we have, I don't know how they old they are, but they're obviously not adults, and they're doing things that I wouldn't let my kids do, but yet they're free to do that on TikTok. And then you've got that well, she looks like this, I don't look like that, so I must be doing something wrong.
Right, that comparison syndrome. Well, we all have that comparison syndrome in our existence. And so I think it is, again, it's mental health is a real issue in this country, and something that
Especially
we need
with the
to
pandemic.
be. Yes,
Especially
yes.
with the
And
pandemic.
again, and being able to have conversations about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to struggle. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay, and I think as we evolve as a society to be able to be more open to those things, so will our children be able to feel comfortable in having these different conversations.
Well, it's a different thing. So obviously, we're pre-computer days, right? I mentioned my daughter was a millennial, so she's actually in the middle. But now my Gen Z kids don't know anything but the devices and the internet and things like that. And so our attention span, our a sense of awareness, what's around us is different, right? We're more, we don't know what's good, we don't know what's bad, and all these different things, the opportunities for us to spend our time. And now we have the pandemic that hit us. So what was everybody doing under the age of whatever? We're looking at our devices.
Yeah. I saw a funny meme the other day. It was a finger and a child, it had a pin through it, you know, and this is like the things we used to do for entertainment. We
Right.
used to like see how
Right.
little on our skin we could get, you know, off
Right.
and just put the pin on
Yeah.
there. And our kids don't know of that, you know, they don't know of being bored. And so it's going to be really interesting to see. And I think, you know, for this is a business show, how that actually evolves long term.
Right.
In the business world, because, you know,
Well, you know-
coding and all of that stuff, like my kids growing up coding.
Sure.
Right.
Well, speaking of business, you mentioned how can a business help, and you mentioned you know, a pizzeria delivering off pizzas, but you know, some of these children go home at night and they go home to very little. They may go home to a foster house, or they may go home to a group home. So any business who would like to contribute maybe a gift card for one of these children.
Yeah, that's also, yes, gift cards are always stuff that we provide. Food is things that uniforms. So Target, you know, is great. Walmart gift cards, all of that. But also we have a silent auction. So if businesses are interested in also getting, you know, some return on investment in their branding, they get to be in our silent auction.
Of
And
course.
yeah,
And you'll promote the business that gives you that. correctly?
absolutely.
Now, I know it's very late in the game. You have an event, I think, this week.
Thursday.
Okay, but what are you planning for the future? Someone who wants to get involved in the future. Maybe this one's a little too close. Do you have anything up your sleeve you could share with us?
Yeah, so actually Give Miami Day is coming up on November 18th, and Kristi House is participating. And so if you are, and I don't know if your viewers know about Give Miami Day, but it's one day where the Miami Foundation really promotes philanthropic giving within our community. And it's a beautiful thing. And every year they kind of raise more money than they did the year before. And so if people are going to be giving at Give Miami Day to any of their charities, right? I say give. It doesn't have to be
Right.
to Kristi House, but I think giving really and finding those charities that you align with
Yeah,
are
so
really
you have a
important.
heartfelt
So
for it.
Give Miami Day is a perfect opportunity for that. So that is November 18th. And then we also have a gala every year.
When is that?
It's in April. So it's April 9th this year. It's going to be
Okay.
at the Four
And
Seasons.
this is all on your website.
All on our website. Yep. So kristihouse.org. And
now,
then
someone could go to your website and sign up for an email.
yep. I love you. I'm going to take you with me always. Yes, please sign up for our email information.
You have to leave the show. That's okay. Well,
But I did want to give the Project Gold number in case
Okay,
that there was
that'd be
anybody
great.
out there. So it's 305-547-6850. So 305-547-6850.
great. And we'll go ahead and make sure we post that out and
Thank
blog it a little
you.
bit too.
Thank you.
So, you know, part of the things that we do is we figure out how to tie the business community into the things that we're doing right now. So if, let's say we have, can a business sponsor a particular girl or a young lady or something like that, or is it just a general group type of donation type of thing?
Yeah, so we don't have any of those like sponsor a child
Okay.
type programs
Okay.
just because of the nature of our
Yeah, it's
You
all
know.
anonymous.
It's all anonymous. Okay,
Yeah,
right.
but
So we don't know.
Of course,
Right.
there are expenses, and
Right.
so if that makes somebody, you know, that they feel like, oh, I want to give tutoring for the year for one girl, like,
Oh,
of
that's a good idea.
course,
Sure.
you know, we're very. We want it to connect, where it feels like somebody's connecting to what they're giving to, and of course, we're not going to. We want to make sure that it's a program we currently have that's a match for them
Right,
as
that
well.
makes
And
sense.
so I look to make sure that there's a match in us.
And that's what you do day to day. You're looking for matches.
I'm looking for matches.
Yeah, so you're a matchmaker.
I am.
Wow.
I help
Matchmaker,
people
matchmaker,
invest.
Yes.
Yes.
So she's the director of the development.
Yeah,
Of course.
yeah.
That's
I'm
great.
an investment.
And that's funny. It's not funny you say that. It's actually dead on, I think.
Yeah.
Because it is an investment. Okay, you're not seeing a return on your bank account, but you're
right.
investing in a human life.
Right.
You're investing in someone else.
Which is
And
more important.
I always said, so I share a story with you in the classroom. I was in the classroom one day and we were talking about, it was a customer service we were talking about. And in customer service, and I had probably about 20 something students there. And we went through a what do you do if you have an angry customer and all these different things. So I said, after we went through the scenario, because there's a method to handle angry customers, I said, well, I probably wouldn't get angry with her because it's probably a young lady or something like that doing her job. And I would think, well, if my daughter was doing that, why would I approach that? And I always put things in that context where if, if that was my family member, how would I feel and what would I do? And I think that's the key thing. It's we can always isolate stuff when we see it on the news, and that's not me and all that stuff. But it is us, because there's no different. The only difference between that person and the person in your house is that relationship. Because if it's 1 in 5, I mean, the odds are it could be you. And
most kids won't disclose,
right,
until later on. So it's interesting that you say that about business training. Asking like, what do you do in a scenario? So then these are the kinds of things businesses can do. They can add to their training. What do you do if you see somebody who looks like they're being trafficked?
Right.
And there's a lot of cities out there that do these large campaigns where it's on the back of the, at any public stadium, it's on the back and with the warning signs.
Right. I've seen that.
And so we do, Kristi House does tons of trainings for the flight attendants and for police officers and for people who are out there in areas, the Port Authority, right? To make sure that we're looking for those signs as well. A lot of times it's adults that get seen and helped because children, you don't necessarily recognize those signs.
Yeah, and I think that's something. The awareness is key.
Yeah,
the awareness is key. I mean, I couldn't, as we sit here today, I mean, I think I know what I see, but maybe I missed something that's pretty obvious to you as a professional, but not to me. And if we can educate everyone on it, look for these 3 things. Like they tell us, as I up in age, I look for the signs of a stroke. Well, if my eye starts switching, I got to be careful. So what are like the top 3 things we need to look for or be aware of if we see something? What would you say?
Well, I mean, I think for commercial sex trafficked victims, it is, if there's a much older man with a clearly under 18 child who does not look to be their parent,
right.
I think it's hard because then you don't want to be looking at everywhere and interfering, so it's very challenging. But I think for teachers, to be able to recognize some of those signs of, like you said, if they're failing, if they're not showing up, runaways,
right.
Those are the kinds of behavioral indications that there's something else that's going on.
So we'll see it in behavior before we see it physically. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, most of the time.
A copy of Stolen, it's on Amazon. It's a very easy read. It's maybe 200 pages.
And I'd love to have, we have experts that can come in here and really talk
that would
about.
Be a plan,
yeah,
definitely.
It's good. I'm going to go back and research too, so I can answer next time.
Cool.
But yeah, I think that it's a really important thing for our community. So I'm glad you are having this discussion.
Absolutely. And I think it's not only valuable for the community, but valuable as individuals, because we always strive. You mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a nice business reference in the middle of all that, by the way. And by the way, the bottom of that need.
I got my marching orders. I understood the assignment. This is a business.
Safety is one of those bottom needs. And safety means shelter and home and all that stuff. But as you move up, you get to that top, which is the self-actualization, right? The value that you have as an individual, so that you can't be more valuable if you're helping someone else. You know? And I think it's interesting because I think as we become, my wife and I, our kids are older, so let's call us empty nesters, right? There's so many of us out there. If you think about it, that's a big, powerful population. Can we get that population to activate somehow?
100%.
Right? So you're talking about 1/5 of the population here in the U.S. Imagine if we had these individuals out there that were activated to be there instead of doing the everyday stuff. They help us look at things, and I think that could be a valuable thing too.
Absolutely. So, mentorship is huge. Volunteering volunteer as a garden ad litem, as a foster care review
all that.
volunteer, as an Educate Tomorrow volunteer. I mean, there are so many ways for people to kind of fill that time, right? Because now your kids have moved out of the house. I'm like counting the days. So I
Right.
have a 6 I have 6 and 10-year-olds, but
It
you
comes
know,
fast.
yeah,
Enjoy
I
it.
know.
It comes
It's a
fast.
blink of an eye. But I
Yeah.
think that, there's so many opportunities. So for people to get involved
Yeah.
in this community and little and big things.
Yeah, and I think that's important. So the key takeaway, and we're coming short on some time here, and we definitely want to have you back and some of
Love to.
the office staff as well as we grow this whole idea of tying into the community, because I think Paul and I both agree that it's a valuable service that we can help grow and understand, let people understand. So I think that the three key takeaways from what I'm hearing is we need to be involved, and we can be involved in all kinds of different levels. I love the idea of the pizzeria saying food. I mean, you wouldn't think of that, but then if you think about the whole pandemic stuff, restaurants were contributing that way to help out the first responders and all the healthcare workers and things like that. So that's an interesting thing. I mean, would they have food? They're making food. Why not contribute that way? That's an easy way to contribute. Of course, the time and effort that you put in to help, that would be a second way that you can be involved. And I think from my discussion here, the most important thing is to be aware and to be cognizant and to make yourself understand what's going out there, because it could be.
And it's scary, right? Like that whole, it's like one of those things like, no, I'm going to keep it over here because I don't want to know about it. But, it's one of those really, really important things that we need to be talking about and learning about.
And so I grew up in New York. We normally we literally see something right next to us and we're like, oh yeah, that's not me, so I'm gonna leave that alone. But you can't. I don't think
I lived in Queens for 7 years.
So I did too. I'm from South Ozone Park, so we're neighbors.
Oh, nice.
So it's something that we can't ignore. So I appreciate the time. So we have a few minutes left, and we normally talk about a couple of things in the business world, and I would love to get your input from your point of view here. And one thing we want to talk about is failures in the business world. And there was one incredible, in my opinion, massive failure. And I don't even know how familiar you are with this, but the name of the company was Quibi, Quibi, I believe it was Quibi. So Quibi meant quick bites, and the whole concept of this, we talked about the kids on devices. The whole concept of this company was to create content that was no more than 10 minutes that you can look at from your phone. And you could look at it. They had this technology. You could look at it vertically or horizontally, but it's a quick 10-minute piece. And Meg Whitman and Jeffrey Katzenberger, Meg Whitman, grew eBay into what it was, and Katzenberger was, Lion King and Shrek and all these. They were leading that company. And guess how much they raised to get that company together?
I don't know. You're going to put me on the spot.
Just pick a number. If you were raising a company, what would you raise?
$100 million.
Yeah, exactly. $1.7 billion.
Wow.
So $1.7 billion.
It failed within the first year.
I mean, they could have given me $100 million. I would have made it work.
So it failed within the first 7 months.
Wow.
So here's the interesting thing about that is, we try to take away some lessons from that whole thing, and just to give you some more background on that whole thing. So they wanted to create this special content, these 10-minute things. They got some famous people to create. Of course, it wasn't the best stuff. It was just stuff that the major studios wouldn't buy. But now here is a company going up against Netflix, going up against Disney, let's say. So they raised $1.7 billion, and we're sitting here. Well, I'll take, $100 million would set me straight for my entire program for years. $1.7 billion in that industry was not enough. Netflix spends about $15 million on new content, $15 billion rather, on new content a year. So you had that going against them. And then they launched in April of 2020. So their whole business model, this is where I think everything sort of came apart. Their whole business model was, well, if I'm on my phone and I'm standing in line, well, I'm waiting for the subway train, or I'm the subway, and I got 10 minutes to kill, instead of going to Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, I'll watch these Quibis for 10 minutes. Of course, the pandemic comes and hits in April of 2020. not a lot of us were standing around.
No, we're Netflix and chilling now.
Yeah, exactly right. So I think it's a whole interesting thing, and we take failure away from that. So timing, I think, is there. Timing and understanding your demographic. The other thing, again, and Paul, I'll let you chime in here as well, is they targeted the younger. Their purpose was to target the Gen Zs. So they wanted to go after the tweens, the 15 to 19-year-old, and they thought they understood what they would look, and they figured, well, we could take some market share away from Instagram and all that, but they just weren't able to do that, and they failed there. So that was at least a rejection of big tech in a way that I thought was interesting. So I don't know what your takeaway of that whole situation is, Paul.
Well, I think they launched at a difficult time. They launched into a market where there was a lot of streaming product. But I think the bottom line for them, the product that they launched just wasn't that good.
Yeah, that's true. And it comes down to product. It always comes down to product. If your product is crap, then you're not going to get sales. I mean, that's basically the idea. So I think it's an interesting. We don't really know a lot about it yet, but it was pretty. I was one of the first subscribers. They sent me a private invitation, and I subscribed, and I think I had free content for like 90 days, and then they still wanted to charge me $8 a month for it. I'm like, I can go to YouTube for free.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I was thinking. That's so I was thinking that. I said, oh,
Why do I want to pay you $8? It's like my wife is a big Sirius fan, the XM radio through the car. She gives them $8 a month. I'm going, what's wrong with you? You could get it for free. Stream it from Pandora, from Spotify. Even Spotify charges you now. So I think that's really interesting. And then, so the other thing we do is we talk about a business book, and I think this book we picked this week really helps us pull everything that we talked about together quite nicely. It's called the Power of Positive Thinking. It's by Norman Vincent Peale. It's been around ever, but it's a really incredible book because it talks about 4 or 5 principles that ties everything together. The first principle that we could share is the ability, know your ability and know what you can do, and visualize all that and be positive, even in a negative world. And I think that the discussion here is timely, because if we talk about these young ladies who are in this situation, how do they remain positive in all this negativity, and what do they do? Because it's not just a business concept, it's a life concept.
Yeah.
I mean, look at all of us. We just went through 18 months. Maybe you could argue we're still going through this 18 months of pandemic. How did we stay positive? And then if you're in that other situation, you have another layer of complexity of all kinds of worries that you don't have normally. So how do you stay positive in that whole situation?
It's so hard. So positive thinking, actually, I'm in a course. I'm getting my certification as an international life coach, and I really around joy, and how do you bring in joy and bring in more joy, right? That law of attraction. So it all starts with positive mindset. And I can't speak for these girls, right? I don't know. I'm not able to walk in their shoes,
right.
But for myself, I know it all is rooted in gratitude. And if I can be grateful for anything, my breath, my pillow, my bed, it allows my mind to really kind of focus on what's important.
Yeah. And that's another concept in the book. It's visualization, and visualize where you are and how you can be. And something else I read years ago is everything we value, everything that's valuable to us, we don't pay for it. It's all free. Our relationships, the love that we have for one another, our health, right? Our brain, our thought pattern. We don't pay anything for that, well, unless you get married and you get divorced, and that love could cost you something. I don't know. I've only been there once, so
only
this is
half
round
of
two. Yeah, so it depends. But everything really, if we think about, we write down what we can't live without, the valuable stuff. It's all something that's free. So it's not, and we have to stay positive because we go in different ways. And I just think that's a really powerful book because it has 5 simple messages, and I think it applies to everybody, and not just a business book, but just a everyday book to understand, right, Paul?
Well, I always reflect back on a famous saying by Henry Ford. He said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah. That's right.
Mhm.
And I think that's important. We've gone through. Look, we all know we call it the new normal now. I don't even know if it's normal what we're experiencing, going through, whatever this is. But we are all changed one way or another coming out of the pandemic. As individuals, we know the businesses are changed. So where do we go from here? But if we stay stuck in where we were, we're never going to achieve wherever we want to achieve, right? So I guess the future looks pretty good depending on what you're looking at, right?
Well, that's,
Or your
that's like
mindset.
your mindset. You know,
Right.
that's so interesting that you said that. You know, I feel that they're really, it's like an inside job.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
great. It's an inside
it's
job.
an inside
I like
job.
that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
like that.
that's pretty good.
That's
Yeah.
very good.
And if you don't wake up, listen, if you don't do those affirmations or whatever it is, you got to
Mhm.
know who you are. And I do believe that you can spiral one way or you can elevate another way. And if you say, oh my God, all these bad things are happening to me, there may be some type of connection from bad thing number 1 to bad thing number 5, possibly,
Well, I
right?
think people have to make a decision. Are they at cause for their life or are they at effect?
Yes, that's
And,
great.
you know, are you like a victim of your situation or are you in control and is life happening for you? And I think that's a really important thing for kind of even business owners
Yes.
to, you know, oh, is all of this happening bad to me and this is because I'm going to fail? Or is it these are lessons that I need to learn, that I need to overcome so that I can actually succeed? And I think
Yeah.
that's the mindset, right? We can think of so many things that are going to go bad or wrong or in the future, and 90% of that time nothing happens.
That's right.
And we spend so much time just thinking about it.
And I just to, as we get ready to wrap up our first broadcast back from being out of the COVID, I remember an older fellow was at a company of mine. He told me, and this is about business, but what he said applies to everything we're talking about today too. He says, Ken, business is really easy. It's the people in the business that make it pretty complicated, right?
Absolutely.
And I think it's that human element that we all missed during this pandemic, that we don't know coming out of this what's going to how it's going to evolve yet. I haven't seen Paul in how many months? I mean, 18, 17 months.
And you grew a beard.
And I grew a beard. I grew a beard. And I lost some more
You
hair.
have to show the.
And I lost some more hair.
He doesn't look like the person on the map.
I mean, I just
didn't
hope that we're
recognize him.
kinder, you know,
Yes.
that we're more patient.
That's right.
That, you know, like, don't lay on your horn in traffic. I blow bubbles in traffic.
That's great.
Because
Do
I
you?
just, I like open the window, I blow bubbles because I figure the person behind me is like, where are those bubbles coming from? And I feel
That's
like I brought some
hilarious.
joy.
I love
And
that. That's
it's like
great.
patience,
Yes,
you know,
patience.
we needed that. We were always rushing, I
Yeah.
feel like, before COVID.
And I think now, and hopefully we're at the end of this. Who knows? Right? Well,
Or maybe we're just at the beginning.
Well, that could be interesting. Well, we just talked about staying positive. Well, why are you bringing us back to? We don't know. But I think as we get ready to wind down here this episode, I think it just to tie it all together. When we say we have to be positive, when we say we have to make some type of impact, right? I think what else can we do? We should be involved in these places where we can make a difference. And maybe that's what we learned from this whole thing, right? It's not just about me going to work 9 to 5. We're learning that now, but it's not just about all these things. Maybe it's about helping the people that we need to help. Maybe that's the signal we're getting. I don't know, right? Maybe that's the signal we're getting.
I think you have to give back.
Yes.
I think if you're going to drink from the well, you need to put some water back.
Right. It's one of those things, right?
I think.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is sort of the end of this particular show, and I really appreciate your time here.
Thanks for
It was so great.
Yay, I love. I'll come back. You put a microphone in front of me, and I'm like, okay, we'll talk.
Yeah, we're gonna get you. Paul and I are gonna create some forward motion stuff. We're gonna definitely gift you with that as our first guest.
Yay!
Back in the studio.
I could like be dressed up as a unicorn.
We can get you an avatar. We can get you an avatar made. Absolutely, we'll get you a shield with a protective, with a protecting the women behind you and stuff like that, we'll come up with a nice appeal there. So, well, thank you very much. It's great to be here,
Thanks for
and
having
I
me.
really appreciate it. And you
Always
definitely
good to
come
see
back.
you.
Yes, you too. Thanks
right.
for what you do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So this is Professor Ken. I'm saying goodbye. So long. I'll see you out there.
Professor Marino, see you next time.
We'll see you next time.